welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. In today's show, I'm going to talk about the lunar eclipse in Virgo, which is coming up on March 14 or 15, depending on whereabouts you are. Overall, March is a momentous month astrologically. We've got 2 eclipses. We also have a major outer planet, Neptune, changing signs. That's towards the end of March. March began with Venus going retrograde, and we have Mercury retrograde happening mid-month as well. So there is a lot of planetary, cosmic kind of twisting and turning going on this month. That means that March might bring delays and adjustments, reversals or reevaluation, along with a nudge towards a big, bright new dream. Of the 2 eclipses that we're going to have in March, it's the lunar eclipse that I've personally got my eye on as being especially potent. That's partly because this lunar eclipse or full moon eclipse is a total eclipse, whereas the solar or new moon eclipse at the end of the month is a partial eclipse. So don't get me wrong, that solar eclipse in Aries at the end of the month is still an eclipse, but a partial eclipse is kind of less dramatic than a total eclipse. And it's this lunar eclipse happening on the 14th or 15th, right around mid-month, that has that total eclipse vibe. So very strong, very dramatic energy. It's also likely that some of those classically unsettling or chaotic eclipse vibes will come out really strongly under that Virgo full moon eclipse. If you're interested in improving your chart interpretation skills and you want to learn how things like the moon phases and fixed stars might influence your chart and personality, you will love my Chart Interpretation C course, which is happening right now. You'll also learn about sect and how it can influence your aspects. As part of that course, there will be 2 live Q&As on Wednesday, March 19. This is one of the most popular chart interpretation courses that I teach. I'm going to share the direct link for it in the show notes below. But don't take my word for it that it could be a great course for you. Here is a review from a past student, Emmy, and here's what she had to say about the course. This course really exceeded my expectation. The extra layers of moon phases and fixed stars added a lot of nuance to my astrological interpretations, and through this course, I gained a much clearer understanding of planetary condition and what it really means. Kelly's teaching style is systematic and clear. She has a skill for explaining profound concepts and techniques without overwhelming you. I loved the inclusion of handpicked readings and the interactive aspect of the homework and discussion forum. So you can hear from Emmy's review there that students do get lots of support, so you can ask questions, you get personal feedback on your homework. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, if you want to improve and deepen your chart interpretation skills, you can jump in and start learning today. And if you do, I look forward to seeing you at the Q&As on the 19th. So with that message shared, let's get back to this Virgo eclipse. As we dive in, I want to cover off a few eclipse essentials first. So eclipse season is a particular period of time, and it happens twice a year for about 5 weeks. So the current eclipse season that we're in started around the very start of March, like late on the 28th of Feb, early on the 1st of March, and runs through till about the 5th of April. So any new or full moon in that eclipse season period of time will be an eclipse. So the whole of March basically is eclipse season. It's the first eclipse season for 2025. We will have a second eclipse season later in the year. When we're in eclipse season, everything is just a little bit wobbly, a little bit up in the air. Things aren't as smooth or as organized as normal. With the eclipses that we're going to have in this eclipse season, we have that full moon or lunar eclipse at 23 Virgo around March 14 or 15. And then the new moon, which will be in Aries, that'll be a solar eclipse that's happening on March 29th. Now, eclipses always represent a break in the usual pattern of things. You could think about an eclipse as like a disruptor for that typical pattern of new and full moons that we have. And that means that eclipses have this unsettling quality. They interrupt things, they break patterns. Now, breaking patterns isn't always a bad thing. That's like the whole point of healing and therapy, for instance. But if you've got a pattern running that you're really relying on in your regular daily life, of course, having that pattern disrupted can be off-putting or unsettling. Eclipse season in general, which is like the whole month of March, right through to those early days of April, that can just be a time when your usual rhythms and routines are off or just not working as well. During eclipse season, it can be helpful to give yourself more flexibility or grace. You may not be able to do as much as you typically do. You might want to give yourself permission to change your schedules or even just take a break from your usual rituals. So with those kind of general eclipse suggestions and basics covered, let's go a little deeper into the specifics of this lunar full moon eclipse in Virgo. So this is the first Virgo eclipse in this current sequence. And that might clue you into the fact that this eclipse represents the beginning of a new process of shape-shifting and release that will continue until February of 2027. That's because between now, March of 2025, and February of 2027, that almost 2-year period is when we're going to be cycling through eclipses in Virgo. There'll be eclipses in other signs as well, but just in terms of focusing on this Virgo eclipse, the Virgo part of your chart, the Virgo themes collectively are beginning a new 2-year sequence. So sometimes the first eclipse in a new sequence can hit kind of strongly because it's like, oh, we need to come back and do eclipsy things around Virgo stuff. Think about the topics of the Virgo house in your personal chart, and of course, the general topics of the sign of Virgo collectively. It's been 9 years since we had any kind of eclipses in Virgo, so you might not be used to this part of your chart and life having the eclipsy qualities to it. Now, you might notice this eclipse really stirring up the topics of the Virgo house in your personal chart. That's how each of us will most intimately tune in to this eclipse, is how is it activating our own chart. So it's a new sequence of eclipses in the sign of Virgo, and that's going to continue for about 2 years. Now, for my money, one of the most important things to understand about an eclipse is to know which of the nodes, is it the north node or the south node, that this eclipse is aligned with. So this is an eclipse in the sign of Virgo, but it is nearest to the south node. So this eclipse is a south node eclipse, and that means south node themes are a huge part of the energy of the eclipse. Now, the south node is about release. It is about letting go and clearing out. It is an emptying out symbol. The south node can have diminishing or reducing qualities, so it's definitely more about endings than about beginnings. So we're thinking about this eclipse being with the south node. Maybe you're thinking about your own chart and where you have the sign of Virgo. And this eclipse might be a little bit of a wake-up call that says, oh, we have got disorganized or cluttered in this part of our chart and lives, and it is time for a massive cleanup and clear out. The south node is also super subjective and it's quite emotional. It's not a rational indicator. So we're not bringing a lot of logic in here. We're operating more instinctively or from that emotional, tender place. So in general, being more sensitive, more reactive, more responsive, more affected by things is quite possible under this eclipse in Virgo. Can be that feeling, like when you have really strong feelings or a strong reaction to something, but you're not quite sure why did you react so strongly to that or what's triggering that. So the full moon, let's do a bit of a recap. It's at 23 Virgo. The south node is at 27 Virgo. So that's how close the moon is to the node at the time of the eclipse. And because the moon is only a few degrees away from the node, that's what makes it a total eclipse. And it's that combination of the moon being near the node, and in this case, it's the south node, that defines the eclipse. Plus, it also tells us about the quality of energy for this eclipse. So, for instance, it's a total lunar eclipse in Virgo nearest to the south node. So, this is an eclipse about shifting, about releasing, about breaking old patterns, maybe about interrupting anxious thinking, maybe interrupting over-analyzing patterns, maybe learning new ways to understand data and information, more about the body rather than the mind, if we bring in some of those Virgo traits and Virgo areas. So if we think more about Virgo now for a minute, this eclipse is in Virgo. So if you find yourself falling into an old trap or an old pattern of overanalyzing or overthinking, you're going to want to try to bring your awareness back into your body and see if you can tune in to the body wisdom, to that more energetic place. So this kind of total south node eclipse can also reduce vitality. So it can reduce our physical well-being, and it can reduce our kind of mental clarity, can also reduce that kind of calm that we can get into in our mind. And so this is an eclipse that really wants to be treated with, tenderness, or we want to be tender with ourselves under this eclipse, is maybe a better way of saying it. So if you can, plan for a very quiet day on the eclipse, whether it's the 14th or 15th. You're not going to want big social events. You're not going to want hugely important work events. You're not going to want family things. You're going to want to minimize, reduce, and just keep very quiet and calm. Maybe you're going to opt to schedule, important duties or tasks or responsibilities. Maybe you're doing it on the 12th and 13th, or maybe you're pushing it off to the 17th or 18th. That's fine too. We don't want to expect a lot from ourselves under a day where the astrological energy is so diminished and so reduced. So opting for rest, really treating your body really gently and really kindly with nourishing food, vitalizing food, vitalizing inputs, so reading philosophy books or a really great novel rather than spending time online, for instance, being outside instead of on devices, but in a very gentle way. So this kind of south node eclipse with the moon there, the moon is one of the planets to do with the body, with health, with vitality. So we immediately see that diminished theme with the moon being so close to the south node. So it's really not the kind of energy that's conducive to major undertakings. So we want to minimize what we have to do where we can. So the next piece to look at, as I consider the chart of the eclipse, for instance, is to look at the ruler of the eclipse in Virgo, which is, of course, Mercury. So at the time of the eclipse, Mercury is at 9 degrees of Aries, so in a kind of independent sign. However, Mercury is right about to station retrograde at the time of the eclipse. In fact, Mercury will station retrograde on March 15, and so the eclipse and Mercury retrograde are very much tied together by this rulership link. So the ruler of the eclipse is a planet that is in station, about to go retrograde. So this is a planet that is in a holding pattern. It is not going anywhere. It is, in fact, changing direction and getting ready to go backwards. Now, an interesting symbolism I'm going to offer here is that in medieval astrology, a planet that was stationing retrograde was described as a sick person taking to their bed. And so this eclipse, which already reduces physical health because it's an eclipse that has the moon near the south node, now has this added symbolism of the ruler of the eclipse stationing retrograde. So we have two different signatures that are about poor or reduced health, if you like. So this eclipse is certainly giving an omen to watch your health, to shore up your vitality, to do what you can to, whether it's boost your immunity, reduce inflammation, take care of your hormones, make sure you're eating well or getting enough rest. Whatever you need to do to shore up your health and vitality, to protect against things that you know your body is sensitive to, we want to be on high alert to those things through this particular eclipse. Now, of course, there's more to say about Mercury, the ruler of the eclipse, about to go retrograde, because that also gives us the symbolism of turning away. So Mercury has been looking forward, seeing the future, figuring out where it wants to go. And Mercury is now turning away from that. So we're turning away from the future. We're turning away from where we're going. We are changing direction. We realize, or circumstances are pushing us to temporarily reconnect with the past. So this is an eclipse that says we have to go backwards before we can go forwards. So what that might mean is that you need to deal with unfinished business. Maybe there's something lingering or lagging that is distracting you or taking up energy and time, and you need to address that before you can put energy in to the new initiatives or the next big thing. Maybe you have to clear some clutter. Maybe there is physical stuff around you that you need to offload. Maybe there is some clutter in your mind or in your schedule or in your energy that needs to be addressed before you can go forward. So this eclipse, it's with the South Node. The ruler of the eclipse is retrograde or about to go retrograde. It definitely feels more like a red light kind of omen that says, don't go here yet, or don't go forward just yet. You're not as ready as you think. Maybe you've forgotten something important. Instead, you're going to pause, you're going to look back, you're going to review, you're going to clear, you're going to declutter. The decisions that you might need to make, maybe not on the day of the eclipse, but maybe in the 24 to 48 hours after, they're not new decisions about new opportunities or offerings or adventures. They're decisions about things that have been lingering that are now taking up too much internal bandwidth. What this eclipse, the sense I'm getting from it is that, it's something needs to be sorted out. Something that is incomplete needs to be resolved. It may be that you have to actually have that discussion or conversation of, I know this isn't finished, but I can't do this now. We're going to come back to it in 3 weeks' time or a month's time. Or it might be, I was interested, but now I'm not. And so that idea of changing, we are reversing course, we're changing perspective, we are changing our mind. This is all baked into this eclipse because the ruler is Mercury about to go retrograde. So that idea of changing perspective, changing decision, shifting your priorities, for instance. So this South Node lunar eclipse in Virgo is incredibly potent. It might help you resolve or release something that's standing in your way, something that maybe you're not even aware of is interfering with your ability to move forward. So you might need to really get into what's driving you, what you thought was important, whether it's still important. So shifting perspective, maybe examining your thinking or reflecting on what your intentions were, clearing out old ideas and mental baggage is hugely important here for this eclipse. As part of this eclipse process, you might get clear on where things are inefficient in your life, where you're wasting time or energy or money, where your habits have become draining rather than supportive and helpful. And I would really encourage you to not shy away from ditching what no longer works under this eclipse. If it's a mindset, right, that's not working. You want to you can thank it, whether it's a mindset or a person or an opportunity or a habit, like, thank you, you were so good for a while and I've outgrown you, or circumstances have moved on and I need something different. This eclipse isn't necessarily about the bringing something different or new in, but it's about recognizing what's no longer working that you're going to stop or extract yourself from. So this is a very potent kind of cosmic omen for endings, for reduction, for simplifying, and for clearing out. Just find ways to give yourself more space and then see what emerges from the spaciousness. The day of the eclipse itself is very low energy, so really do the minimum that you can. Everybody's lives and schedules are different, but that eclipse day, whether it's the 14th of March or the 15th of March, just do the absolute basics. Then give it 24 hours, and then you've got about 2 weeks in the aftermath of the eclipse, where you can focus on the clearing, the decluttering, the changing your mindset, the sorting out the past, the dealing with unfinished business. So that's kind of how we'll let whatever comes up for us, we're going to get quiet and still under the eclipse. We're going to tune into what we need to let go of, and that's going to be our work for the 2 weeks following the eclipse. So let me know in the comments below what's coming up for release for you under this very potent emptying out Virgo South Node eclipse. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. Until then, take care.